You are listening to the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast, Episode 4. In this episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast, we talk to you about some changes that we've got coming up with the show, and we get into some public hunting land tips to help you be more successful when hunting pressured public land. All right, welcome to the show. We're glad you're here joining us for the fourth episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. This episode, we're going to talk about a few changes that we've got coming up with the show. We're also going to cover some public hunting land tips to give you, a little bit of an advantage or try to help you be a little bit more successful when hunting pressured public land. Joining me as always is my co-host Dan Harushka. Dan, how are you?
Doing pretty well. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I've been spending a lot of time getting out and we're winding down on the early goose season. So, we got out last weekend down here in Virginia, chasing some geese and tried to get on a few teal, but weren't really, successful. We were hunting a new spot. So it was something we were just kind of trying out, experimental. Hopefully we'll have a little better success in that area later in the season. But I know you guys had a pretty good hunt here recently, didn't you?
Yeah. Last week I tried to get out once before work, and, when you have to be at work at 8:30, sometimes you're picking up the decoys and the birds are coming in right at that time, which I don't know if we can get a DU biologist on sometime, but it seems like they have a inner tracking device. They know when you're going out and reaching for decoys. They seem to always come in. But this weekend, we've been missing some birds and finally did some more scouting, and we were able to get out and locate a good group, and we knocked a few down. We hunted with some friends and some staffers of ours, and it was not slow from sun up till we left the field. I mean, there were just birds and birds and birds. So it was definitely a good hunt, and I wish you could have been up here for it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I always sit here and see the pictures and the footage of you guys doing well up there, and I get jealous, but I'm confident that we've got some spots down here that we're gonna give you boys a run for your money here a little bit later in the season when it gets a little bit colder. But obviously, congratulations to you guys. It was good to see your scouting pay off for you, and hopefully once the seasons come back in, we're about getting ready to get into the split here. But once they get back in, you guys will be able to continue having success and putting more birds on the ground.
Yeah, and I took my dog out. We had 9 guys in the field, and there's been, our normal hunt is a group here and a group there and another group, but I think she was a little overwhelmed with, at one point I think we probably had 200, 250 birds in the air, and, we're shooting and dropping a couple, and she, during one volley with birds going around, she made 3 different retrieves, and they're still trying to come in. So, it's a different strategy. Some guys will keep their dog in the whole time, but at the moment, Kimber, when she sees birds falling, she's going to get them. So she put a lot of miles on, and it was fun to watch her work. She came back a few times with a little bit of blood on her, and I think she had one of the best days of her career. So it was fun to watch her work as well.
Yeah, it always makes for a little bit extra special when you can get to see your dog or a buddy's dog. I always enjoy having Kimber out in the field when I'm up there. So I can't wait to see the footage of that, and we'll be sharing that on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page and all that kind of stuff for everybody to check out. So everybody will get to take a look at that. So one thing that we wanted to touch on a little bit here in this episode of the show is some changes that we've got coming up with the podcast. We've had just an overwhelmingly positive response to the podcast here, kind of in the early going, and if anything, it's just people that have given us feedback as they want more information and they want it more frequently, and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, there's only so much time in the day that we're able to do this. But Dan and I have made the decision that we're going to go ahead and we're going to change the format a little bit, and we're going to come out and do a weekly release instead of a bi-weekly. We had been doing kind of twice a month, the 1st and the 15th of the month for the release. We're now going to be changing to a weekly release for the show. So we will have a new episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast for you every Monday of the week. You can get that show, automatically sent to your phone and tablet or your computer. If you subscribe to the show through iTunes, it'll be on our website. You can get the podcast on YouTube. You can play it on YouTube through your phone, that kind of stuff. There's a bunch of other podcast directories that we're involved with now and that our show can be found on. So lots of avenues and ways to find the show, and it's going to be out there for you more frequently. So once a week, kind of moving forward here, starting with this coming Monday.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about the weekly release. But that being said, we like getting the emails and the phone calls with different ideas. What do you guys want to hear about, guys and girls? What can we cover for you? Who are some people that you'd like to hear come on and, talk about what they do with the industry? And, just don't be afraid to contact us.
Yeah, and to tag on with that, if you're someone who's listening to the show and think that you have something that you could bring to the show that people would want to hear, you yourself, if you think you could be a guest on the show, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you, and maybe we can have you on the show as well. All of the positive feedback that we've been getting is absolutely amazing, and we are incredibly grateful for everyone who listens to the show. For those of you out there that enjoy the show, the best thing that you can do to help support this podcast is go to iTunes and subscribe, as well as fill out a rating or a review. It takes 2 or 3 minutes of your time, and that just really has a positive impact on our show and gets us higher rankings in iTunes and things. And it really, what it does is it allows us to be featured more, so that more people like you can find the show and listen in. So that's the number one thing that you can do to support the show, and obviously we appreciate everyone's support, and thank you all in advance for doing that. Another thing that we've added to the show that we're really excited about, actually, is we've added a hotline. And what this is basically a voicemail that you can call. And if you've got a question for the show or a comment or something like that, you can give us a call on this number. And if we like what you have to say, or we think you got a really great question, we can feature your voicemail right here on the show, so everyone else can hear from you as well. So the number for that is 724-609-3695. And that number is also on our website, and it's on all of our contact information. So if you've got a comment or a question for the show, feel free to give us a call on that hotline. And again, if we like what we hear from you, we think you bring a good point or some good feedback, we'll share it with the audience here, and we'll play it right here on the HP Outdoors Waterfowl podcast for everybody else to hear.
Yeah, we're all about constructive criticism. So give us a call, send us an email, however you want, and let us know. So
This episode, Dan, the main thing that we wanted to cover was, hunting public land, and what are some of the things that you can do to be successful when hunting pressured public land. Not everybody has the opportunity to hunt, private properties, or go on guided hunts and those sort of things. So we thought it was really, important to combine a bunch of information that we've either found to be successful, or we think, depending on your situation, can be successful if you hunt in these situations. So we've got a really good, kind of a composite list that we've put together here, but by no means are we going to cover every single tip, that can help you be successful.
Yeah, let's get into it here.
Okay, let's have it. All right, so the first thing that I think is important to know is, if you think that you're just going to show up to a public hunting area and have success without putting any kind of legwork in up front, you're setting yourself up for failure. What's really common with public ground is, not only are you going to have a lot of people there, but you've probably had people that are going to be there that have been hunting that particular property for a really long time and know it in and out, thought of everything that you're going to think of, all of that sort of stuff. So competitive, it's going to be competitive to start before you even get out of the truck. So if you don't do some sort of research before you get there, like I said, you're just already starting off on the wrong foot. Depending on what your situation is, if you're going to be hunting out of the area, or if you're a first-time waterfowler and you're saying, I just want to try this out and see how it goes, and I'm going to head out to the local, wildlife management area, and I know there's a pond or a wetlands back there, and I'm going to just see how this goes, I'd recommend that you reach out to your state, agencies that handles the laws for hunting and fishing in your state, and make sure that there's nothing there that you're overlooking. Maybe you've been a deer hunter up until this time, and there might be laws or guidelines that apply to you now that didn't apply to you then. As far as wearing orange or not, the type of shotgun shells you can use. Some of those things that for seasoned waterfowl hunters think are fairly basic and kind of common practice. If you're a new waterfowl hunter, these might be foreign to you. So definitely check out the state agencies and make sure that you're keeping above board with all the laws.
Yeah, I heard a story not very long ago that you're talking about your own state, but if you go out of state, we're in Pennsylvania here, and I was talking to someone who had a buddy that lives in Ohio. Oh, he was talking about one day he came over to Conneaut Lake, and he's like, man, that was such a great hunt. I had the whole lake to myself. I limited out, and it was awesome. I couldn't believe no one else was out there. Well, it was on a Sunday. And in Pennsylvania, you can't hunt on a Sunday, where in Ohio you can. And, contact not only your state, but if you're going out of state, know what you're getting into.
Yeah, and another good example of that is here in Virginia, depending on where in the state you hunt, there's blind laws where you have to be a certain distance from, other blinds by law. You have to have, if you're going to hunt out of a boat with a blind, it has to be licensed. There's a lot of different things with these blind laws that are very confusing. They're very complex. So you're really setting yourself up for a bad day if you don't know those laws. So again, know the regulations and know kind of what you're getting into before you get out there.
Right. And something to do with that, property boundaries. There's GPS systems that have all the boundaries of state land and, public land, private land. They have every, parcel identified. And I'm sure that there's even apps out there that you could download. But, property boundaries in some states more than others are really strict. So you want to be on top of that and know where you're going and really what's in the background of what you're shooting in some parts of the world.
Yeah, no doubt. Property lines, you don't want to get pinched for a trespassing just because you didn't know where you needed to be and all that kind of stuff. So really good point there. I think another thing that's pretty important about hunting public land is you should probably have realistic expectations. I mean, if you're expecting to go out to a place that you've never hunted before, maybe hunted once or twice, and you're expecting to just have mallard after mallard come into your decoy spread feet down, if you don't have ducks like in that level of population or that kind of stuff in your area, you shouldn't have that expectation. If you're hunting in areas where you're kind of wooded creeks and those sort of things, maybe your expectation should be get a shot at a couple woodies or maybe some teal in the early season, that kind of thing. I think it's just can be really demoralizing and really humbling if you go out there thinking that you're going to fill up a bag limit every time and then you don't do it. You're going to face enough challenges dealing with people and pressure and everything else when you're out hunting public ground. Actually harvesting the birds is something that you need to just keep your expectations in check. There's going to be days where you have great hunts where you do fill those bag limits, but then there's going to be days when you don't. And having just keeping that ebb and flow in check, I think is pretty important when you're going to be hunting public ground.
Yeah, and being up here around the Great Lakes and Pymatuning and Conneaut Lake, public places, there's some days that are amazing, and there's some days that you should have just stayed in bed.
And the funny thing is, no one wants to give up their great spots, but you can really gain a lot of information from reading, internet forums and that kind of stuff. It'll help you get an expectation of what you should see. Maybe what you should be expecting is a bunch of boats lined up at the ramp in the morning. If you weren't expecting that, but it's commonly known that particular piece gets hunted really heavily, then, you're going to be disappointed. That's a disappointment that you could avoid had you going in that it's a really pressured area and that you should be expecting to see that when you show up at the ramp. So, get out on the forums. Don't expect to find it, somebody's going to tell you which blind is the best to hunt or which is this, that, or the other. But it'll give you a general feel for kind of what's going on the property. If you see a lot of forums where a lot of people are posting about that particular property, it's probably a safe bet that it gets a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and we talk on this show about helping people out, and I'll get on every once in a while. A couple years back, Pymatuning was just no water in it. Some of the ramps you couldn't even use. They had them shut down because you're pretty much backing right into mud. So, some guys were about to make 6-7 hour trips to come up for opening day of duck, and some people were saying, watch the water levels, blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, I went out and scouted a little bit. You couldn't even get your boat in the water. So, it's definitely helpful, especially if you're not a local to the area that you want to go. The internet, technology in some ways has been amazing in that way.
Yeah, and when you mention internet and technology, of course, most people, if you're not doing it by now, you're way behind the eight ball. But using Google Maps, Google Earth, aerial images, that sort of stuff. If you're going out of town to hunt, or even if you're going to a spot that you've never hunted before, but it's just 10 miles up the road from your house, pull out the aerial map, take a look, see where your access points are going to be, where your water sources are, that sort of stuff. Give yourself an idea so you're literally not going in just completely blind.
Yeah, Google Earth is awesome. I absolutely love that. Also, what some people can do, you can get on your county website. You can get on a tax assessor's website. So if you find something, if you find a pond or a good sized lake or property that's next to game lands or something, get on there. You can, most of the time you can click and see who's being assessed for that property. So you can white page them and find a phone number or go out to their address and talk to them to obtain permission. So there's a lot of benefits to the internet.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing that you can do a lot through the internet, it's this way in Virginia. I can't speak about every state, obviously, but I know here locally, there's a lot of different lottery and reservation hunts available. So you can submit, and potentially be drawn to hunt some of these properties. The good thing about the reservation hunts are they limit the amount of people that are going to be on the property hunting waterfowl any particular day. So that if you're drawn or you've got a reservation for that day, the blind that you're going to hunt is going to be open. There's not going to be anybody there. I've seen it up in Maryland this way a couple times too. They have blinds that are maintained by the state, and tax dollars and hunting revenue that goes into maintaining these properties. And you can go on and reserve these blinds and know that you're going to go there, and that blind's going to be there empty for you, and you're going to have proper spacing from people around you and things like that. So, the perceived extra effort and kind of pain in the neck putting in for these lottery hunts or these reservation hunts can quickly be outweighed by actually doing it, getting out there and having a good hunt. You'll see a lot of people will avoid them just because of that perception that it's going to be so much extra effort.
Yeah, and a lot of people, they won't contact a WCO, a conservation officer. A lot of those guys, they're willing to help, and they're hunters themselves, and they want everyone to be safe and have a good time. So don't hesitate to call them if you have any questions. Putting in for a lottery or some of these specific blind hunts. Give them a call and figure it out before you just walk into it blind. And more than not, you're going to get yourself into trouble if you try and sneak in, or sometimes there's shell limitations. You can only take 10 shells going into a blind. So talk to someone if you don't know the rules, and you'll be a lot happier that way.
So let's talk about what you do once you get there, or while you're looking at your aerial maps and you're trying to figure out where you want to go. The obvious thing and the conventional wisdom is focus on your hard to reach areas. Just like we were just talking about. Hunters in general, this is a sweeping generality, but hunters in general are lazy. They're going to go, if they think they can kill ducks 100 yards from the ramp, they're going to go 100 yards from the ramp. So take a look at that. A lot of times people, you hear it commonly with deer hunting is, they'll mark all the access points to the property on a map, and then they'll draw, a half a mile radius circle around that spot, and they'll go nowhere where those circles are contained. So they're going past where everybody will walk in. It's the same thing with waterfowl hunting. Obviously you're a little bit limited, depending on the amount of water and that kind of stuff on the property, but focus on that hard to reach area and what you can do to get away from the crowds. Just really think to yourself, what's going to be the most difficult, because the chances are there's going to be less people in that particular spot.
I'm just going to throw out some of the best scouters that you can have are people that trap, just because they're in the back waterways. They know every nook and cranny of the waterways, going in there and trapping. So, talk to a local trapper and see if they've been seeing birds. If you're at a loss, that couldn't hurt.
Yeah, we've actually, we've had something like that happen to us in the past. We were getting ready to go hunt a pond, kind of swampy area, and there we knew a guy who was archery hunting that piece of property, and he told us the night before he had just seen, dozens and dozens and dozens of wood ducks dumping in on this pond in the evening time and that kind of thing. And so we were obviously excited for the next day. It turns out it was a bunch of gadwalls, and we had a great hunt. But like that, a deer hunter might not be willing to tell you what kind of deer he's been seeing, but chances are he'll share with you what kind of, ducks he's been seeing flying through the area.
Double.
The next thing is to just look at hunting overlooked areas. There's a lot of times when you first look at it, it may not appeal to you. It's probably not going to appeal to anybody else. But if you look at it a little bit closer, some of the seasonal wetlands, small creeks, things of that nature, can really be really productive when hunting waterfowl, especially when the pressure gets up and they're looking for something that's not as obvious, where they might be able to tuck out of the way a little bit. So focusing on those areas can be really beneficial.
Yeah, I'm a Facebook junkie, and I have a lot of friends that are waterfowl hunters and in other states, and you're talking about the seasonal wetlands, and some of these guys are just these little potholes of water. I mean, they're 20 feet by 15 feet, and just have just loads of teal dumping into them at the moment, and they're just having killer hunts. So, find it, and it's you never know.
Yeah, and one thing that I want to point out here too is, when you're looking at Google Maps or Google Earth, and these, they're not updated that regularly. So just because you see a waterway on that map doesn't mean that waterway is there that time of year when you're going to look. And conversely, just because you don't see water in a spot doesn't mean that there's not water there. Some of the backwaters, if it's been a really heavy rain season, things of that nature, you may have water in places that you normally don't. And if you're not out there looking for it, you're not going to know it's there. And that's probably where you're going to have some of the best hunting. So, don't overlook that, and don't just count on the maps themselves. Use those as a tool to help you kind of narrow down and refine your search.
Yeah, and you're talking about different times of years. Sometimes when lakes are froze over, find where that lake is getting fed, or find where, there's an outflow. And just because the lake is frozen over doesn't mean that those, the streams are frozen over as well. And, if you have ducks migrating through, or geese, you might have a bang out hunt going up and, sitting on those small streams.
Yeah, especially if you're getting that, the main reservoirs and lakes, the larger bodies of water are locking up, farm ponds and stuff are locking up as well. You may only have an option of going to, some quicker moving water that, if given the option, they wouldn't probably go there as their first choice. But if that's all they've got left, if you know where that type of water is and you're able to get in there first, that's going to give you a leg up on everyone else that's trying also to hunt that type of stuff, which gets me to my next point. Obviously you got to get to your spot early. If you're going to hunt public ground, you have to get there early. I remember last year we hunted the opener of duck season up in Pennsylvania. The day before, we scouted a spot, public ground, bunch of ducks and geese on the water, had really high expectations, but it's not like this spot was off the beaten path. It was a easily accessible, frequently traveled area. We expected to see a bunch of people. When I threw out there the time that we needed to get up and get out there, everybody looked at me crazy. But I'm the type where I don't want my day to be ruined because I'm not willing to get up 30 minutes or 45 minutes early. So that's just me, but I get there super, super early.
Yeah, we did get there early, and it was probably, we were finished setting up, and I don't know what to say about some of those waterfowlers, because it was getting pretty late and they were still trying to get to their spot. So for duck, especially when the sun's coming up, you should be in there. And that was kind of a fluke, I think. But yeah, we got there pretty early.
Yeah, and it also helped out that we were there early because I ended up having my gun completely jam up and basically had to disassemble it over the canoe in the swamp, and almost turned into a catastrophe. But luckily crisis was averted because we had plenty of time before shooting light to get that all squared away. So it does have its benefits to get in there and get settled early on.
Hey, I was going to say, speaking of that, know your equipment, not specifically guns, but know like your waders, like the inner pockets of your waders, because we ended up putting a couple parts in your chest pocket there that could have easily went through and just, it would have been lost in the swamp without it out. So, know where if you're hanging over a canoe or what you're in, but that's just another side tip, because that would have been even worse.
Yeah, I put the charging handle essentially of my gun in the chest pocket of my waders that had a drain hole in the bottom that it could have easily fallen out of. I was a complete disaster that morning, so I'm going to give myself a pass. Haven't done that since. So, all right, let's talk about what gives you the best opportunities for success. When you're hunting these places. Obviously, most people realize that you're going to have better success more than likely hunting the weekdays when there's not as many people around. If you're going to be hunting the weekends, you can expect everybody and their brother to be out there as well. So if you're able to take some time off of work, or if you work a flexible schedule that lets you get some time out in the morning, hunting weekdays is definitely going to give you a better opportunity.
Yeah, getting back in a duck swamp during the week, I try and go out before work just about every day when duck season comes in. Like there's nothing like it. It's one of the most peaceful times of year, and I don't know, that just gets my blood going there.
And for a state like Pennsylvania, Michigan, some of these places where deer hunting is really, really popular, hunt the first day of deer season. Everyone's going to be out there chasing whitetails, that kind of stuff. That can be, you can have the waterfowl spots completely to yourself because everyone's going to be out there chasing deer. So, if that is something that you're willing to compromise because you want to get out there and get on a good waterfowl hunt, there may not be a better day than the first day of deer season. Yeah,
the good old Pennsylvania deer drive, when you have, the Orange Army out there and they're trying to get through every swamp they can. That's some of the only times that the private land will get touched and kicked out. Not just deer but birds.
Another common thing that you want to look for is, the first day after a season split, when the duck season or the goose season takes a week off intermittently there throughout the season. Obviously you want to try to get back out there and hunt that first day that you can after the split. If you can hunt that first Saturday or whenever it comes in, those birds are going to be unpressured for a week. So not only the birds that are, your local birds or that are in the area at that time haven't been hunted for a week, but also any birds that have migrated into the area within that week have not been pressured in your particular holes and things like that. So it might be one of the better times of the year to get on some of those new birds as they move into the area. We go down to Maryland and hunt every year on the Eastern Shore. In the last couple of years, we've always timed it up that we're hunting the first day of that last split. So we're trying to maximize the opportunity for cold weather and new birds right after that split, where hopefully they've been unpressured for the last week or so. And it's always been pretty successful. So I think that's a really important thing.
Yeah, I can't wait to make it back to Maryland this year. I'm pretty excited already. And we're going in January, so got a few months.
It's got me a little nervous though, because they're calling for a really, really tough winter this year. And, I'm worried about ice and things like that. So we may be hunting over some ice eaters and that kind of thing down there. But I have no doubt that with the weather, if it's as cold as we hope it'll be, the birds will be there, and that's what counts. So another thing along these lines is, some of the properties here in Virginia, I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but, some of the properties in Virginia are only open certain days of the week. You might only be able to hunt Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. So obviously if you're going to, give it a day or two to rest, getting back in there after they haven't been pressured might be beneficial. Some of the military bases, for example, in the area have their blinds split into zones, and Saturday is the only day that every blind in every zone is open. The rest of the week, they rotate it on a schedule. So every day of the week, only one zone is open. So the other two are getting rest. So if you keep an eye on that and know, what days you might be able to hunt, that'll help you and say, well, I can hunt Wednesday and zone 2 has been closed for the last 2 days. So let me try to get a blind in there this for that morning and see what I can do. So, anytime you can find a spot that hasn't been pressured, take advantage of it.
Yeah, and that goes back to one of our first podcasts when we talked, if it's the first day after a split, or if it's a day after a property's closed, or, if you have a midday where you can get out and hunt, like make sure you're going out and scouting, because, if they're going into a field at night, like we said before, you don't need to go out in the morning and just lay in the field all day. Like try and be successful and know when those birds are showing up, especially if you have properties closed for, a day like a Sunday here, or a Tuesday or Wednesday, however the property is closed off. Go out and scout those days and see what the birds are doing.
Yeah, and you've talked about scouting, and you've talked about hunting before work and those sort of things. Where that can also come into play is if you have a job, for example, where you get off early, where you maybe work, shift work where you're getting done at 2 o'clock or something along those lines. Some of these waterfowl spots in public ground, they get pressured so much in the morning that birds won't even come in there until later on in the day when most of the hunters have already left for the day because they got to get to work or, they got to, do whatever they got to do. So some of those midday loafing spots, things like that can be really dynamite on public ground, but you don't know it unless you're there to see it. And you have the opportunity to hunt those hours of the day. So just kind of think off access a little bit when you're talking about when you want to hunt. And, anytime you can sleep in a little bit and get a couple extra hours of shut eye is always a good thing.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially when you're hunting with you getting out there so early. But another thing, make sure you hunt all the way through the season. And especially like this early season, we easily could have just bagged it. Initially, before season opened, we had a ton of birds, and they were all gone. Like opening day, yeah, we had a few, but not even the day before opening season. There were a lot more birds in there, and we just haven't been able to locate them and keep after it. And like I said, at one point this past weekend, we had 250, 300 birds flying over us at one time. Like it was something I've never seen before around here. In early season in this general area, at least. So stay after it and find out where they're at.
Yeah, this point is incredibly critical in my opinion, especially for the waterfowler that hunts exclusively public ground. As the season wears on and people get tired and it gets harder to get up on Saturday morning and that kind of stuff, the numbers of hunters in the field will drop. And I can guarantee you, if you stick with it, you will be out there by yourself or with just a couple other dedicated folks like yourself, and you will have better success. It doesn't matter if you're hunting the most pressured ground in any state that you're going to hunt. The later in the year it gets, and then the more people the season grinds on them, and they just say, I'm going to sleep in this morning, or it's too cold, and that kind of thing. That's when you're going to have your best hunts. Those are the ones that, because of your perseverance, you're going to have success. So don't give up on the season. Trust that the scouting and the research and the stuff that you've done is going to put you in a position to have success, and stick with it. You can't kill them on your couch. You can't kill them laying in bed in the morning. So, hang in there and see it all the way through. It's a short season. We all wish it could be a 365, type of thing, but it's not. So maximize the time, get yourself geared up, mentally prepared to give it everything you got while the season's in.
Yeah, I can't argue with that at all.
So Dan, let's talk a little bit about some decoy techniques, some things that people can do when they're hunting public ground, as far as with their decoys and to kind of be successful. And for me, the thing that jumps out is just be different. If whether it's you go with a really big spread because everyone else is only carrying 5 mallards in with them, and you want to look like a refuge and you throw out a bunch, or if you want to go really small because everyone's throwing out the refuge and you're hunting this little back creek where there's just going to be a small number of birds traveling through that area, that kind of thing. Just be different. Be different than what the birds are seeing everybody else use when they're flying overhead. Yeah.
Well, if you do, I'm just gonna say, if you do go small, make sure that you're using your best decoys that you have. If they're magnum sized or, the most detail, if they're flocked, make sure they're pretty, make sure the mud's taken off of them. And like you said, sometimes you show up to public land and, if there's just no way that you're going to be able to hunt that, and if you don't have a backup field, stick around and see what those people are doing. Like you can stay off in a distance. You won't affect anybody's hunt. Get your binoculars out, see what kind of spread they're going with. If they have a ton of decoys out and you see birds flaring or, it's just not working, maybe try and mix it up if you can make it out there, a day after, 2 days after. Like you said, be different, adjust to what the birds are doing.
Yeah, and along the lines, if you're going to go with a smaller spread, for example, or really in any spread, we like to use goose decoys regardless of whether it's we're goose hunting or we're targeting ducks. We like to use geese because they increase, comfort. They increase visibility. It helps you stick out at a longer range. Obviously goose decoy is way bigger than your duck decoy, so they're going to give you a lot of extra visibility, a lot of extra confidence. So that's something that's a tip that we like to use to help us be a little bit different and kind of stick out on when hunting, really anywhere, but particularly public ground.
Yep. I love putting the goose floater out with duck decoys. It's just, like you said, a bunch of confidence for ducks to be coming in.
And I think another thing that's important is, just be realistic for your setting. If you're hunting, a backwater creek, where it's more common to see, your dabblers, mallards, wood ducks, that kind of thing, don't go out there and pitch a bunch of canvasbacks or, a dozen, goldeneye decoys or something like that. Use your head, be smart with that, fit into the setting, hunt the, use the type of decoys that you expect to, see flying in the air and kind of mimic the situation and just, be as realistic as you can, whether it's whether you're using 3 decoys or whether you're using 3 dozen, try to mimic what you've seen the birds do in the field when you're out scouting.
Yeah, that takes me to another point when we were, talking about state agencies and laws and regulations. If you use a spinning decoy, make sure that it is legal in your state. I know Pennsylvania, we use the jerk string a lot because we're not the mojos that are battery powered. You can't have any battery powered decoys in the field. So that's one thing. If you are getting into it, make sure you know the regulation for the state you're in.
Yep, without question. To tag on with that, if you're hunting an area where spinning decoys are legal and everybody that you're hunting with out there has got spinning decoys going, we talk about being different, but sometimes motion can be a different ball game. Sometimes if you don't have that type of motion, you can really be left out, especially with spinning decoys, because, as birds are flying around, their vision is not like ours, and they're looking for things that just catch their eye at a distance. And when you have these spinning decoys on the water and things like that, that catches attention at a distance and helps to draw them in, where if you don't have that, you may be kind of on the outside looking in with some of that stuff. So if it's legal, use your spinning decoys, but always you should have a jerk string, especially if it's a calm morning, no wind, something to put ripple in the water, something to just use a flag. You can stand in your blind and flag at birds at a distance. Anything that you can use to get their attention is going to potentially separate you, or at least keep you in the game with everybody else that's hunting around you. I think another thing that is important to think about is just being flexible. When you're getting ready to go hunt public ground, you need to expect to have people around you, and it's going to force you at times to think outside of the box. Don't limit yourself to the conventional thought of, well, this is what I've always done, or this is how I was taught, or this is how I learned. Think about things that you can do to be a little bit different and just get outside of that box, because the same things that you're thinking of as far as that in the box type thinking are the same thing that every other hunter that's out there that day is going to be thinking. So if you can find a way to be different and be a little bit more flexible, it might be the difference between going home empty handed and having a nice day.
Yeah, think outside the box, go off road. That's what I like to think. People, they'll take if you show up to a public place and you think you're going to hunt right outside the parking area, you guarantee that you're not going to be by yourself. So go off road a little bit, go through some jaggers. Well, not in waders, but you know what I mean. Get out there and find some new spots. Go off road.
A little bit of flexibility can go a long way in having a good day. Something else that can go a long way in having a good day of hunting on public ground is having a little bit of common courtesy for the people around you. Treat everybody like you would want to be treated. If you've got a hunter that's set up, make sure you give them enough room to where they can enjoy their hunt, and you can do the same. You obviously wouldn't want somebody walking in there and setting up right in your lap. So extend them that same courtesy.
Yeah, there's nothing like that when you're set up and you have someone, at least if they're going to be that close, at least try and invite them to hunt with you, and like we said before, don't get too overheated. Just, let them know that something's not going to work out and try and, I don't know, make a good decision and work it out.
Yeah, and something that also goes along the same lines that I think, anybody that's hunted public ground has run into this issue, and it's incredibly frustrating, is sky busting. There's nothing worse than having a group of ducks or geese work your area and you let them pass because they're out of range with the hopes that you can work them back in, and they fly down the waterway a little ways and another group starts shooting at them way out of range, doesn't take any of the birds, and they all fly away. I was listening to the Wired to Hunt podcast with Mark Kenyon, and he had a great interview with Tiffany and Lee Lakoski, and they were talking about managing their farms for trophy deer and how difficult it can be to pass on a young buck that has all kinds of potential, but it's he's a 140 that they think could be a 170 or 180, and how hard it is to pass on deer like that. And the common common thought for a lot of people is, well, if I don't take that deer, it's going to walk across the property line onto my neighbors and they're going to take that deer. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot this deer. When I heard Lee say that, it immediately put me to duck hunting and sky busting, because it's so easy to want to take a shot outside of your effective or ethical range, because the thought process is, well, if I don't shoot at these ducks, they're going to fly down the way and the next blind is going to shoot at them. If you're doing that, you are the person that that they say is sky busting. So, just like Lee says, if you're the landowner that shoots that deer, you're the landowner that they're talking about, that the neighbor will say, if I don't shoot this deer, the neighbor is going to shoot it. So, don't be the guy. Don't be the one that that you need to talk about and say, well, if I don't shoot at them, these people will shoot at them. Don't be those people. Let the birds work. If everybody would get on board with that, everybody would be better off. I'm probably being a little wishful here in my thinking, but it sure would be nice if everybody would not shoot at birds out of range.
Yeah, the education process with sky busting is just unreal. You take the time. If you just want to pull the trigger, go and shoot some clays. Go to your sportsman's club, go shoot some clays, and stop educating the birds. Like there's some shots that just shouldn't even be taken. They think they're hunting with a rifle sometimes. So yeah, I know your frustration level with that.
Yeah, no doubt. Another thing that frustrates me too, and I've seen this a handful of times, is don't be cleaning your birds at the boat ramp or in the parking lot of the public area. I mean, here in Virginia, we've got people that go on those public grounds, horseback riding. They just hike, they do bird watching, they do dog trials, that kind of stuff. It puts a really bad light on waterfowl hunters if they come out and see a bunch of feathers and things like that spread all over the boat launch or the parking area. So just use your head with that stuff. Don't make a mess in a scene, and we obviously want to be painted in the most positive light that we can. So just don't overlook that kind of stuff when you're going to be in common public areas.
Yeah, a good rule of thumb is leave it better than you found it. And I mean, not just duck hunting, but there's been times where you take a junior out to turkey hunt, and someone cleaned a turkey right in the parking lot too. So you're taking a junior out, trying to get new people into hunting, and the first thing they do is see, a rotting carcass. And it's just unnecessary. Take it home and throw it in the garbage or clean it somewhere else. Don't put it where everyone's walking through.
And another thing, my final point on this is, just keep your cool. If you run into a situation where you find somebody in the field that's not extending these same common courtesies, keep a cool head. There's nothing that's worth fighting over, especially when you're in the field with firearms involved, that kind of stuff. Just cooler heads prevail. Be the bigger man. If it requires you to pick up and move on, maybe that's part of being the flexible that we talked about. Just there's nothing worse than ruin a day than having an incident in the field, especially if kids are around or that kind of stuff. So just be the bigger man, and nothing's worth having a major accident over. So just keep your head out there.
Yep, there's enough antis out there. We don't need hunters fighting amongst ourselves. There's no doubt about that. So,
and the final point that we want to mention about hunting on public ground is don't forget the basics. It's easy to overthink it and want to do something special that's going to be that silver bullet to have you a great hunt. But don't forget, you still got to be concealed, whether you're hunting out of a blind or you're standing on a creek bank or something like that. Make sure you're getting covered up, you're covering your face, that kind of stuff. Don't overlook any of that sort of stuff.
Yep, that goes back, camoed up, check your stuff. Same with the calling techniques. You don't always have to come just firing out of the box with that. So just basic stuff.
Yeah, Lord knows you've hunted public ground where you hear the guy, 200 yards down the way just blowing on the duck call like a kazoo all morning long. He's not doing anybody any favors, and I'm sure he's not calling in any birds, something like that. So, just sometimes less is more when you're calling in that kind of situation, and just in general, your setup is important. Keeping the sun at your back, that kind of stuff, getting the birds landed into the wind at the best you can, all of those things that you're going to do, whether you're hunting on public ground or you're going to do the same thing you're hunting with the guy that you paid money to do it with, all of that stuff still applies when you're out there hunting pressured birds.
Yeah, it just takes me back to the opening day duck last year. You're talking about the pond that was, public land and the sun position and not having camo. Yeah, you always see all the different memes going around, and don't pie face the ducks. And the guys that were kind of catty corner to us last year that I don't know how much experience they have, but you see just all woods. They had camo on, but man, were their faces just glaring. I mean, it was awful. So needless to say, they did a lot of sky busting, but they didn't get any birds close.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you hate to see all your hard work and all your effort go in for naught because you overlooked something silly like that. So, we hope that this list helps you. And, I'm not sure that we recreated the wheel here or said anything earth-shattering, but maybe it's something that there's one or two spots in there where you hadn't thought about. If there's something else that you do that you think is a good tip or that you think you'd like to share with us, shoot us an email. You can hit us on info@hpoutdoors.com. You can send us a message on our Facebook page or Twitter page. You can also call us on the hotline 724-609-3695. And if we like your tip and we think it's great, we'll share it on the podcast with everybody else to hear. But, Dan, I think that this is a pretty comprehensive list that covers, the general stuff and sort of the main important parts.
Right. And, a lot of guys that have been hunting public land for years and years, I'm sure they didn't learn anything, but, that's not what we're all about. We're trying to get people out. And, if you've never been out before and just something as basic as knowing if you could use a battery-powered decoy, like some people might not know that. So that's what we're trying to get out there. And, I hope we helped someone.
Without question, that's what we're here to do. And we hope that everybody found this to be beneficial. So let's go ahead and get into this episode's parting shot. So the parting shot this episode has to do with the internet. We've talked a lot about that, and one of the things that has come about recently is the introduction of the e-stamp. So now you can buy your state and your federal waterfowl stamps online. You don't even have to go to the post office to purchase them. That sounds great, but I'm old school in that regard. I like to collect the stamps. I like going to the post office and pick them up. I recently registered to hunt at one of the local military bases here in Virginia, and they actually tried to tell me that I didn't have a federal stamp. Even though I was holding it right in front of them to show them. The gal was literally looking on my license for the e-stamp receipt to see if I had purchased my stamp online. They literally had to call 2 different game wardens, and when they couldn't reach them, they quote-unquote took my word for it that the stamp that I was showing was a federal duck stamp. And it just left me kind of shaking my head because, the internet is a great thing. It offers us a great amount of information as waterfowl hunters. But when I think about it, there's nothing you can replace the old crusty stamp that you get from the post office. So, there's part of me that just really hopes that that doesn't go the way of the bird as well. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. We hope you enjoyed hearing some tips about hunting public land and keep you up to speed with the new show changes. So look for us on a weekly basis. You can check us out at hpoutdoors.com. You can go to iTunes or you can call us on our hotline, 724-609-3695. We appreciate you guys listening to the show. If you have anything for us, please reach out and let us know. We're more than willing to accommodate you in any way we can. So for Dan, I'm Josh. Thanks for joining us. Take care.